It was one of those perfect Saturday mornings in Willow Creek, where the sun shone softly through the kitchen window and the birds outside chirped in lazy harmony. Emily Johnson leaned against the marble counter, cradling her warm cup of coffee. As she scrolled through her phone, her husband, Mark, sat at the table, half hidden behind the morning newspaper. Sarah, the young nanny, hummed a little tune as she mashed fresh bananas into a smooth puree for baby Liam. Their 8-month-old son sat in his high chair, babbling and laughing as he kicked his chubby legs, oblivious to the chaos fate had planned. At their feet, Rex, the family's majestic German shepherd, rested lazily, his thick golden brown fur catching the light. He was more than just a dog to the Johnsons. He had been with them for years, fiercely loyal, endlessly protective. Yet, that morning, something about Rex seemed different. Sarah noticed it first. "Rex has been restless lately," she said casually, scooping the mashed bananas into a small bowl. "He keeps pacing at night, almost like he hears something we don't." Emily glanced at Rex and chuckled. "He's probably bored, Sarah. Maybe take him for an extra long walk later." But Rex wasn't bored. His sharp amber eyes were locked on the bowl Sarah had just prepared. His nostrils flared slightly as he sniffed the air, his ears twitching. With sudden alertness, nobody noticed the subtle tension in his muscles, the way his tail stiffened, or how he stopped blinking entirely. Sarah placed the bowl in front of Liam and scooped a spoonful of banana mash, smiling warmly as she brought it toward his tiny mouth. But before the spoon even touched his lips, Rex exploded into action. With a terrifying growl, he lunged forward, jaws wide, and clamped his powerful teeth onto Sarah's wrist. The nanny screamed. The bowl clattered to the floor, and Liam burst into loud cries of confusion and fear. "Rex!" "No," Emily shouted, her coffee mug shattering as it slipped from her trembling hands. Mark dropped the newspaper and leaped toward the scene, grabbing Rex's collar and trying desperately to pull him back. But Rex wouldn't let go. His growls were deep, guttural, primal. Sarah struggled to free herself, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Get him off me. He's gone crazy." Finally, Mark yanked hard enough that Rex released his grip, but the damage was done. Sarah stumbled backward, clutching her bleeding wrist, sobbing in shock and pain. Emily scooped Liam from his high chair and held him tightly against her chest, rocking him as she glared at Rex. "What's wrong with you? You've never done this before." Rex stood there, chest heaving, his sharp eyes still fixed on the overturned bowl of mashed bananas. He growled low, deep in his throat, but his gaze wasn't on Sarah anymore. It was on the food. Mark noticed it too. Why is he looking at the bowl like that? Nobody had an answer. The only sound in the kitchen was Liam's frightened wails and the soft drip of Sarah's blood onto the floor. Rex had never acted out before, never bitten anyone. But something about that bowl had triggered him, and nobody knew why. Emily knelt, trembling, as she picked up the bowl. Half the banana mash was smeared across the tiles, but there was still some left inside. She brought it close to her nose and froze. There was something off about the smell. Emily's heart pounded as she stared at the half-smeared banana mash clinging to the sides of the bowl. Something about the faint, chemical-like odor gnawed at her senses, but she tried to dismiss it. "Maybe it's just me," she whispered under her breath, her voice shaky. Rex, however, wasn't convinced. The German shepherd's nose twitched as he pawed at the spilled food, his low growls vibrating in his chest. It wasn't aggression, it was warning. He barked sharply, startling everyone in the room. Emily, Mark said, trying to calm Rex. You don't think something's wrong with the food, do you? Sarah, pale and still clutching her injured wrist, stammered, No. I made it fresh this morning. Just bananas, that's all. I even peeled them myself. Rex barked again, louder this time, his teeth flashing as he stood between Liam and the fallen bowl. Emily backed away slowly, holding the baby tightly. Mark grabbed the jar of bananas they'd used, inspecting the label. It was one of those 100% organic brands they had always trusted. No additives, no preservatives, nothing but pure fruit. At least, that's what the label claimed. Emily hesitated, dipping a fingertip into the mash and sniffing it again, more carefully this time. That's when she caught it, unmistakably, a sharp chemical temp beneath the sweetness of the fruit. She pulled her finger back quickly and wiped it on a napkin. Mark, she whispered, there's something in this. I can smell it. His face darkened instantly. Call poison control, right now. Within minutes, Emily was on the phone, explaining the situation while clutching Liam against her shoulder. The representative on the other end instructed her not to feed the baby anything from the batch and to bring the food sample in for urgent testing. Sarah sat on the couch, still shaking, her injured wrist wrapped in a towel. I don't understand. She kept muttering. I swear it was just bananas. How is this possible? Rex didn't take his eyes off the bowl. He stood rigid, alert, a living barrier between Liam and the danger no one else had seen coming. Hours later, they rushed the food sample to the hospital lab. The wait was agonizing. Every minute felt like an hour as Emily paced back and forth. Mark sat stiffly gripping his knees, and Sarah cried softly in the corner. Rex lay at Liam's feet, head resting protectively against the baby's tiny socks, his eyes half shut, but ears still twitching at every sound. Finally, the phone rang. Emily snatched it up instantly, her voice trembling. Hello, Mrs. Johnson, the doctor's voice came through, heavy with concern. We've completed the tests. There are traces of ethylene glycol in the food sample. Emily froze. What is that? It's the main component in antifreeze, the doctor said gravely. Highly toxic. If your baby had ingested even a small amount, it could have been fatal within hours. Emily's knees gave out. Mark caught her before she hit the floor, his face pale and stricken. Are you saying? Emily's voice cracked. He almost, yes, the doctor said gently. Your baby is safe. Thanks to your dog. Emily clutched the phone tightly, her fingers trembling as the doctor's words echoed in her ears. Traces of ethylene glycol. Fatal if ingested. It didn't make sense. How could something so deadly end up in a simple jar of baby food? Her gaze drifted toward Liam, who sat on the living room rug, surrounded by toys, giggling innocently, completely unaware of how close he had come to tragedy. Her throat tightened and tears pooled in her eyes. Mark gently pried the phone from her hand and spoke to the doctor himself, gathering every detail. When he hung up, his expression was unreadable, but his knuckles were white from gripping the device so tightly. They said it was deliberate, Mark finally murmured, his voice low and strained. There's no way that amount of ethylene glycol could have gotten into the jar accidentally. Either contamination at the plant, or someone tampered with it. Sarah gasped audibly from the couch, where she sat with her bandaged wrist. Wait, are you saying someone poisoned the baby food? Her voice cracked, a mix of disbelief and fear. Emily swallowed hard and nodded slowly. That's what it sounds like. Silence filled the room for a moment. Only Rex's soft breathing and Liam's playful coos broke the tension. The German shepherd lay by Liam's side like a silent guardian, his head resting between his paws but his sharp amber eyes scanning the room constantly. Emily suddenly reached out and ran her fingers through Rex's fur, her tears dripping onto his coat. "He knew, Mark," she whispered hoarsely. "He knew before any of us. He saved Liam." Mark crouched next to them, finally breaking down, his arms wrapping around both Emily and Liam. "I don't even want to think about what would have happened if Rex hadn't stopped Sarah from feeding him." Sarah flinched at the memory, guilt washing over her. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I thought he was attacking me for no reason. I should have trusted him." Emily shook her head gently, squeezing Sarah's hand with her free one. "No, you couldn't have known. None of us could have." Just then, Emily's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from the news. She opened the article and gasped. "Mark," she said, shoving the phone toward him, "look at this." The headline read, "Nationwide recall issued on PureBite Organics baby food after reports of contamination." The article revealed that several families had already rushed their infants to emergency rooms after showing signs of poisoning. Investigators suspected a serious manufacturing error or deliberate sabotage. Emily's hands shook as she scrolled. "If Rex hadn't stopped us," she trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Mark stood abruptly and began pacing. "We need to take Liam in for a full checkup anyway. Even if he didn't swallow anything, I want to be sure." An hour later, they were at the hospital. Doctors examined Liam thoroughly and reassured them he was unharmed. But Sarah needed stitches for the deep bite marks on her wrist, and she winced as the doctor treated her. While they waited, the doctor, the same one who'd called earlier, came by again. "You should know something," he said gravely. "This isn't the first report we've had today. Rex might have just saved your baby's life." Emily hugged Rex tightly right there in the sterile hallway, whispering into his ear, "You're our hero, our guardian." Back home that evening, Liam was put to bed safely, and Sarah went upstairs to rest. Emily and Mark sat in the living room, the weight of the day pressing down like a storm cloud. Rex lay at their feet, his head tilted slightly as though sensing their unease. Mark broke the silence. "From now on, we trust him. No questions asked." Emily nodded, stroking Rex's fur gently. "He's more than a pet, he's family." The next morning brought a strange sense of calm. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, bathing the kitchen in a soft, golden glow. But for the Johnson family, everything had changed. Emily stood by the counter, preparing breakfast carefully, double-checking every ingredient, every label, every jar. Trust, something so simple, now felt fragile. Rex sat near Liam's high chair, his watchful eyes scanning every move Emily made. Where once he'd been a lazy morning companion, today he was a sentry on duty, a silent protector. News of the contaminated baby food had exploded overnight. Social media feeds were flooded with frantic warnings from parents and official recall notices from the manufacturer. At least a dozen infants had been hospitalized across the country. But thanks to Rex, Liam wasn't one of them. Emily decided to share their story online, not expecting much. But within hours, her post went viral. Photos of Rex, standing tall, ears perked, with Liam cradled in Emily's arms, spread like wildfire. People from around the world commented on his bravery, calling him a hero, a savior, a guardian angel. Mark scrolled through the comments, shaking his head in disbelief. "Look at this. People are donating to animal shelters in his name." They're calling him Guardian Rex. Emily smiled softly, kissing Rex's forehead. He deserves every bit of it. Sarah joined them in the kitchen later that morning, her wrist bandaged but her expression lighter than before. She knelt down, meeting Rex's gaze. "I'm sorry, boy," she whispered, stroking his head gently. "I should have trusted you." Rex responded with a slow wag of his tail and a soft nudge of his nose against her hand, as though forgiving her instantly. Life slowly began returning. Too normal in the Johnson household. But one thing was certain, they would never see Rex the same way again. Every bark, every growl, every sudden alert glance now carried meaning. He wasn't just reacting to nothing. He was watching over them, keeping them safe in ways they couldn't always understand. Weeks later, the investigation confirmed that the contamination had been the result of deliberate sabotage at the manufacturing plant. Authorities arrested a former employee seeking revenge against the company. Without Rex's instincts, Liam would have been another name on a devastating list. That night, as Emily tucked Liam into bed, she glanced down at Rex, curled up by the crib, his ears twitching even in his sleep. She smiled through tears. "Thank you, boy," she whispered softly. Mark joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "He's not just our dog, Emily. He's our guardian angel." Outside, the wind rustled softly through the trees, carrying with it a deep sense of gratitude, relief, and renewed trust. Rex had saved Liam's life, and in doing so, he'd reminded them all of the incredible bond between humans and their canine companions, a bond built on instinct, loyalty, and love. And that's why you should never underestimate the instincts of a canine. Rex didn't attack the nanny out of anger. He was protecting baby Liam from a deadly danger no one else could sense. If you enjoyed this story and want more real-life canine hero tales, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to Canine Era. Trust me, you don't want to miss the next one. It's even more unbelievable than this.